I was sitting at the dining room table when my son-in-law placed the papers in front of me. They weren't ordinary documents. They were property transfer contracts for the company that my wife and I had built together over 40 years. Catherine had been buried only 6 days ago. "Sign here, here, and here," said Bradley, pointing with the expensive pen he always carried in his pocket. My daughter Emma was next to him, avoiding my gaze. She stared at her own hands as if they were the most fascinating things in the world. I picked up the papers and began to read. My eyes still burned from sleepless nights. The house still smelled of funeral flowers. Catherine's black dress was still hanging in the bedroom closet. I couldn't get it out of my head. "Dad, we need to do this now," Emma finally spoke, her voice sounding strange, practiced. "You're not in a position to run the company alone. Mom was always the one who handled the numbers, the important decisions." That cut me. Not because it was a lie, but because it was a truth used as a weapon. Bradley leaned over the table. He wore a gray suit that probably cost more than the first car Catherine and I bought together. "Look, Thomas, we're doing this for your own good. You're 68. You lost your wife. You need to rest, enjoy retirement. Let us take care of the business. For my own good." As if I were a child incapable of deciding my own fate. I looked at my daughter. Emma was 32. She had grown up in the company offices, playing between desks while Catherine and I worked late. I remembered her at 7, wearing my safety helmet while we visited construction sites. She wanted to be an architect like her mother. But the woman sitting in front of me was not that little girl. This woman had calculating eyes. This woman had married Bradley 3 years ago, and since then something had changed. She stopped asking about my days. She stopped calling just to chat. Visits became meetings. "I need time to think," I said, putting the papers back on the table. Bradley laughed. It wasn't a cheerful laugh. It was a cold, metallic sound. "Time? While you think, the company is bleeding money. Clients are nervous. Employees are insecure. Either you sign this today, or we'll have to take more drastic measures." More drastic measures. I repeated, feeling something tighten in my chest. "We have lawyers, Thomas. We can prove that you're not mentally fit to run the company. Especially now, in your emotional state." The threat hung in the air like toxic smoke. My own daughter was sitting there, allowing this man to threaten me in the house where she grew up, 6 days after we buried the woman who gave birth to her. I stood up slowly. My legs trembled, but not from weakness. It was anger. A cold, ancient anger I hadn't felt in decades. "Get out of my house," I said. Bradley smiled. That smile haunts me to this day. It was the smile of someone who had already won and knew it. "You have 24 hours to reconsider. After that, we do it the hard way." They left. I stood there in the empty room, listening to their car drive away down the street. Only then did my legs give out, and I sat on the floor, my back against the wall. Catherine. My Catherine. She would have known what to do. She always knew. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in her office, surrounded by the architectural projects she would never finish. There were plans for a school to be built in the suburbs. Drawings for a community library. Catherine didn't just design buildings. She designed dreams. At 3 in the morning, my phone rang. It was David, our lawyer and friend of 30 years. "Thomas, sorry to call so late. But I need to see you tomorrow morning. Urgent." "David, if it's about the papers Emma and Bradley brought." "It's not just about that. Catherine left something for you. She insisted I only give it to you after the funeral." My heart raced. "What?" "I can't talk on the phone. Come to the office at 9. That was the longest night of my life. Every minute dragged like an hour. I walked around the house, touching Catherine's things. Her favorite coffee cup. The reading glasses she always left on the arm of the sofa. The notebook where she sketched random ideas. In the notebook, I found something that made me stop. It was a recent drawing, from the last week before she passed. It wasn't a building. It was a safe. An old safe with intricate details. Below it, Catherine had written just one word: protect. I didn't know what it meant. But Catherine never did anything without purpose. By 8 in the morning, I was already dressed and ready. I drove to downtown, to the law office where David worked. The secretary took me straight to his office. David was serious. He was 65, gray-haired, with kind eyes that had witnessed decades of family drama. But that day, he looked worried. "Thomas, sit down." He placed a thick folder on the table between us. Catherine came to see me 3 months before she passed. She knew her time was running out. And she asked me to investigate some things. Investigate what? David opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, corporate documents, transaction records. My eyes scanned the numbers without understanding. Catherine suspected someone was embezzling money from the company. She hired me to find out who and how much. My stomach sank. How much? In the last 2 years, over $800,000 were withdrawn through a phantom consulting company. The company is called EB Solutions. EB. Emma and Bradley. David continued, his voice growing graver. Each withdrawal coincides with specific moments. When Catherine was hospitalized for the first time. When she started chemotherapy. When she received the terminal diagnosis. They used her illness as a distraction. I couldn't breathe properly. The room seemed to spin. "There's more," David said hesitantly. "Catherine discovered this 3 weeks before she died. She wanted to tell you, but she was too weak. So she prepared something." He took a sealed envelope from the folder. It had Catherine's name written on the front, in that elegant handwriting I knew so well. "She made me promise I would only give this to you after Emma and Bradley made their move. Catherine knew they would come after the company as soon as she died. She knew her own daughter better than she wanted to admit." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. The last letter my wife wrote. "My love," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I am gone. And it means our daughter has become someone I can no longer recognize. Forgive me for not having the courage to face this while I was alive. Forgive me for leaving this burden to you. But I prepared everything. There is a safe in the house. You will know where to look. Inside it is the truth I have kept for all these years. A truth that will protect everything we built together. Don't let them win, Thomas. Don't let our legacy become just money in the hands of people who have forgotten what love is. With all my heart, Catherine." I read the letter 5 times. David watched me in silence, giving me time to process. "The safe," I finally said. She drew a safe in her notebook. David nodded. "Then you know what you need to do." I returned home with my mind racing. A safe. Catherine had hidden something important in a safe. But where? Our house had 3 floors. It could be anywhere. I started with the bedroom. I searched the closet, looked behind the paintings, checked under the bed. Nothing. I went to her office. I rummaged through drawers, moved furniture, tapped the walls for hollow spaces. Nothing. I was about to give up when I remembered the basement. Catherine rarely went there. It was damp and dark, full of old boxes and gardening equipment. But there was something there she always protected, an old shelf that belonged to her mother. I descended the creaking stairs. The dim basement light cast strange shadows. The shelf was in the corner, covered by an old tarp. I removed the tarp and examined each shelf. On the last one, hidden behind a row of dusty books, I saw it. A small, old safe, exactly like Catherine's drawing. I tried to open it, but it was locked. I needed a key. Where would Catherine keep a key? I went back to the bedroom and looked at her jewelry. Nothing. To the desk. Nothing. I was about to give up when my eyes landed on the wedding photo next to the bed. Catherine and I, young and smiling, unaware of what the future would bring. I removed the photo from the frame. Behind it, taped in place, was a small golden key. My hands shook as I returned to the basement. I inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click. Inside the safe were documents. Many documents. And a flash drive. I took everything and went up to the office. I spent the next few hours reading each page. And as I read, my world collapsed and rebuilt itself at the same time. Catherine had documented everything. Every penny embezzled. Every fake transaction. Every lie. But there was more. Much more. There was a DNA test. Emma was my biological daughter, no doubt. But the test revealed something I never imagined. Something about Catherine's lineage that changed everything. And there was a will. A secret will that Catherine had prepared just 2 months before she died. A will that included a very specific clause about inheritance by blood. I inserted the flash drive into the computer. It was a video. Catherine, weak but determined, recorded in her hospital bed. "Thomas, my love. If you are seeing this, it's because our daughter has forgotten who she is. It's because money has become more important than family. I prepared everything for you. Use this information wisely. Protect our legacy. And remember, family isn't just blood. It's who chooses to stay when everything falls apart." The screen went black. I sat there in the dark, with the documents scattered around me. Bradley said I had 24 hours. Well, I was going to use every single one of them. If you're enjoying this story and want to know what happens when Thomas discovers the whole truth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what Catherine prepared will change everything. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. It wasn't the clarity of peace, but the clarity of mission. Catherine had left me weapons. Now I had to learn how to use them. I called David at 7 in the morning. "I need you at my house. Bring everything you have on corporate law and inheritance law." "I'm on my way," he replied without hesitation. While waiting, I studied every document from the safe again. The bank statements showed a clear pattern. Bradley had created EB Solutions 6 months after marrying Emma. The first withdrawals were small, 5,000 here, 3,000 there. Amounts that could go unnoticed in the accounting of a large construction company like ours. But as Catherine got sicker, the amounts increased. 20,000. 50,000. 100,000. The last withdrawal had been made 3 days before the funeral. $85,000 for strategic expansion consulting. They had bled the company while Catherine bled in a hospital bed. David arrived with 2 huge folders and a grim expression. "I went through everything again last night," he said, sitting in the living room. "The situation is worse than I initially thought. Bradley isn't just greedy. He's meticulous. Every transaction has false documentation, forged contracts, invented reports. If we go to court with only this, he'll argue that the services were legitimate." "But you said Catherine had proof." "I do. She hired a private investigator. He tracked every cent. EB Solutions has no physical office, no employees, no prior work history. It's an empty shell. But we need more to ensure a complete victory." I showed him the secret will Catherine had prepared. David read in silence, his eyes widening with each paragraph. When he finished, he looked at me with something like admiration. "She was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." "Explain." Catherine created a specific lineage clause. The company can only be inherited by her direct blood descendants. You as spouse maintain lifetime control. But after your death, only biological descendants of Catherine Peterson can take over. I frowned. "But Emma is our daughter." "She is. But look here." David pointed to a specific paragraph. "Catherine requires that any heir prove not only biological descent, but also moral integrity and commitment to the founding values of the company. She established a council of 3 people who must unanimously vote in favor of the heir." "Who's on that council?" "You, me, and Helen Zhao." Helen Zhao. The woman Catherine had hired as CFO 15 years ago. A woman of unwavering principles who had refused 3 offers from bigger companies because she believed in what we were doing. Helen knows about this. Catherine spoke to her 2 weeks before she died. "Helen is waiting for your contact." I picked up the phone and dialed Helen's number. She answered on the second ring. "Thomas. I was expecting your call." "You knew what Catherine was planning?" "I did. And there's something else you need to know. Bradley approached me yesterday. Offered $200,000 for me to support transferring the company to him and Emma." My blood ran cold. "What did you say?" I said I'd think about it. But actually, I recorded the whole conversation. There was steel in Helen's voice. Catherine warned me this could happen. She gave me very clear instructions. I pretend to consider, gain their trust, and document everything. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. Can you come here today? I'll be there in an hour. While waiting for Helen, David showed me the rest of Catherine's plan. She had prepared not only proof of the embezzlement but a complete strategy on how to expose Emma and Bradley. She wanted it public, David explained. Not just a silent lawsuit. Catherine wanted everyone in the company to know what they did. She believed it was the only way to protect you and her legacy. Why? Because if it were private, Emma and Bradley could create a narrative that you were a bitter old man persecuting your own daughter. But if it were public, with irrefutable evidence presented before the entire council, they would have no way to defend themselves. Helen arrived carrying a laptop bag. She was 48, with black hair tied in a flawless bun, and eyes that didn't forgive incompetence. Thomas, she said, hugging me briefly. I'm so sorry about Catherine. She was the best boss I've ever had. We sat at the kitchen table. Helen opened the laptop and began to play the recording. Bradley's voice filled the room. Helen, you're a smart woman. You know how things work. Thomas is finished. He can barely get out of bed in the morning. In 6 months, he'll be in a nursing home. The company needs young leadership. Visionary leadership. And you think you can provide that? Helen's voice was neutral, professional. I know I can. I already have investors interested. We can triple the size of the company in 2 years. But I need key people on my side. People like you. And what are you offering? 200,000 now. Plus a bonus of 500,000 when the transition is complete. All you need to do is vote in favor of the transfer when Thomas calls the board meeting. What do you say? There was a pause. Then Helen's voice, calculated, I say I need guarantees. I want to see the contract on paper. Smart. I like that. I'll prepare everything. The recording ended. I looked at Helen with renewed respect. Bradley will bring the contract tomorrow, she said. I'll sign in front of him. But my signature will be under documented coercion. David has already prepared the papers. David nodded. It's a perfect trap. Bradley thinks he bought Helen. But in reality, he's creating more proof of conspiracy and bribery. We spent the next hours planning every detail. Catherine had left a script, but we had to adapt it to the current situation. David would make copies of all documents. Helen would continue pretending to side with Bradley. And I would call an extraordinary board meeting for the following week. But before that, David said, we need one last piece of the puzzle. What? Catherine's nurse. Rosa Martinez. She cared for Catherine during the last 3 months. Catherine trusted her completely. And Rosa witnessed something important. My heart raced. What? Catherine was lucid until the end. But Emma and Bradley were telling the doctors she was confused, delirious. They wanted the doctors to declare her mentally incompetent. Rosa refused to confirm this. She has detailed records of every visit, every conversation. Catherine was lucid, alert, and fully aware of what was happening around her. Why did they want Catherine declared incompetent? David and Helen exchanged glances. To nullify any changes she made to the will in the final weeks of her life, Helen explained. If Catherine were declared incompetent, the old will would prevail. And in the old will, Emma inherits everything equally with you. The betrayal was deeper than I imagined. They weren't just stealing the company. They were trying to steal even Catherine's final wishes. Where is Rosa now? I know where to find her, Helen said. I can bring her here tomorrow. That night, I sat alone in Catherine's office. The documents were organized in methodical piles around me. Evidence of embezzlement. Evidence of bribery. Evidence of conspiracy. All prepared by a woman who knew she was dying but refused to let bad people destroy 40 years of honest work. I picked up the wedding photo again. Catherine in her simple dress, me in my rented suit. We were 25. No money, no connections, just dreams and determination. I won't let you down, I said to the photo. I promise. The next day, Rosa Martinez arrived at my house at 2 in the afternoon. She was a small woman, perhaps 50, with kind eyes and calloused hands from decades of caring for sick people. Mr. Peterson, she said, her voice thick with a Latin accent. Your wife was a special woman. In her last days, she spoke a lot about you. What did she say? Rosa opened a bag and took out a notebook. I keep records of everything with my patients. It's standard procedure. But with Mrs. Peterson, she asked me to be especially careful. She knew your daughter was scheming something. Rosa opened the notebook and began reading. It was detailed notes from Catherine's final weeks. Her medical conditions, her levels of consciousness, her conversations. January 15th, Rosa read. 3 p.m. Mrs. Peterson fully alert. Discussed details of the will with lawyer David Chun. Fully understood all implications. Signed documents with a steady hand. January 20th. 11 a.m. Daughter Emma and son-in-law Bradley visited. Tried to convince Mrs. Peterson to sign over power of attorney. Mrs. Peterson categorically refused. Said, and I quote, "You've taken enough from me while I'm still alive." My heart ached hearing that. Catherine had faced the betrayal alone, not wanting to worry me while I was already shattered watching her waste away. January 25th. 4 p.m. Mrs. Peterson asked to speak with me privately. Said her daughter was no longer the girl she raised. Said money had poisoned Emma. She cried. It was the only time I saw her cry. Rosa closed the notebook, her own eyes moist. Mr. Peterson, your wife made me promise something. She made me promise that if anything happened, if your daughter tried anything after she died, I would tell you everything. And I would show these records. Because she knew you would need them. Thank you, Rosa. You don't know how much this means. I know. And there's one more thing. Rosa hesitated. On the last day, when Mrs. Peterson was very weak, she gave me this. Rosa took a small envelope from her bag. My name was written on the front, in Catherine's trembling handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a short note. Thomas, don't let anger consume you. Do what needs to be done, but remember Emma is still our daughter. The poison can be removed. The person she was can still return. Give her a chance to redeem herself, even if she doesn't deserve it. Because that's what love does. With all my heart, always see. I folded the note and put it in my shirt pocket, close to my heart. Rosa, would you be willing to testify at a board meeting? Yes. Mrs. Peterson prepared me for this. She said it might be necessary. When Rosa left, I called David. We have everything. Call the meeting for Monday. 9 a.m. All board members. And send a special invitation to Emma and Bradley. Are you sure you want to do this? Catherine was sure. And she was never wrong. On Sunday night, the eve of the meeting, my phone rang. It was Emma. Dad, we need to talk. We'll talk tomorrow. At the meeting. No. Now. In person. There was something different in her voice. It wasn't the calculated coldness of recent days. It was almost fear. All right. Come. 20 minutes later, Emma was at my door. Alone. Without Bradley. She looked smaller than I remembered. Younger. More lost. Dad, I made a mistake. I said nothing. Just waited. Bradley said it was all legal. Said it was just smart tax planning. I didn't know about the money. I swear I didn't. You're lying. She began to cry. Okay. I knew. But Bradley said it was our right. That we were just taking what would eventually be ours anyway. He said you and Mom would never notice. Your mother noticed. She noticed everything. Emma turned pale. She knew. She knew. And even knowing, even dying, she prepared a way to save you. One last chance. But you have to choose, Emma. Tomorrow morning, at that meeting, you need to choose who you are. The daughter I raised, or the person Bradley made you. Emma looked at me with red, swollen eyes. And if I choose wrong? Then you lose more than the company. You lose yourself. She left without saying another word. I stayed awake all night, wondering if Catherine was right. If there was still hope for our daughter. On Monday morning, I put on my best suit. The same one I had worn at Catherine's funeral. I looked in the mirror and saw an older man, more tired, but not defeated. Today, I said to my reflection, we deliver justice. I grabbed the folder with all the documents and left the house. The sun was rising over the city that Catherine and I helped build. Buildings that bore her name. Schools she designed. Libraries she dreamed of. That was the true legacy. Not the money. Not the company. It was what we left behind that mattered more than ourselves. And I wasn't going to let small-minded people destroy something so great. The 10th floor boardroom was silent when I arrived. The huge windows showed the city waking up, buildings illuminated by the morning sun. Catherine had always loved that view. She said that from there, she could see the future we were building. Helen was already there, organized as always, with her laptop open and documents perfectly stacked. David was beside her, reviewing notes. The other 5 board members began to arrive: Richard, our chief operating officer for 20 years, Jennifer, head of human resources, Marcus, chief engineer, Patricia, marketing director, and James, financial controller. Everyone seemed confused. Extraordinary meetings were rare. Extraordinary meetings so soon after Catherine's death were unprecedented. Emma and Bradley arrived exactly at 9. He wore another expensive suit, navy this time, and carried a leather folder. Emma was pale, dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept. Bradley greeted me with a confident smile. "Thomas, good to see you reconsidering. This will be better for everyone." He really thought I had called the meeting to hand over the company. "Sit down," I said. I waited until everyone was seated. The room was tense. I could feel curiosity, worry, and confusion flowing around the table. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," I began. "I know the past few weeks have been difficult. We lost not just a leader, but a visionary. Catherine Peterson built this company from the ground up with me. She was the soul of this place." Some heads nodded. Jennifer discreetly wiped her eyes. "But today we are not here to remember Catherine. We are here because she asked me to do something. Something she carefully planned before she died." Bradley furrowed his brow. Emma turned even paler. "In the last 2 years," I continued, my voice firm, "this company lost over $800,000 to a consulting firm called EB Solutions." There was a murmur around the table. James, the controller, looked confused. "Thomas, I review all transactions. These consultancies were approved by me," I interrupted. "Or at least, documents with my forged signature approved them. David, please." David began distributing folders to each board member. Bradley tried to take one, but I stopped him. "You'll get yours. But not now." Inside the folders were copies of bank statements, forged contracts, and the private investigator's report. I watched as each person read, their faces changing from confusion to shock to anger. "EB Solutions," I continued, "does not exist as an operational entity. It has no office, no employees, no legitimate work history. It is a shell company created to siphon funds from this company." "That's absurd," Bradley finally spoke, his voice loud. "These are serious accusations you're making without proof." "Without proof." I turned to him. "David, show page 12 of the report." David pointed for everyone to see. Page 12 shows the corporate record of EB Solutions. It was created 6 months after Bradley Foster and Emma Peterson married. The only shareholders are Bradley Foster, 60%, and Emma Peterson, 40%. Emma closed her eyes. Bradley turned red. "That proves nothing," he said. "We provided legitimate consulting. Marketing strategy, market analysis, expansion planning. Then can you show us those reports?" Richard asked, his voice sharp. "Because in 20 years here, I've never seen a single document from EB Solutions." Bradley opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "I can answer that," Helen said, her voice calm. "There are no reports because no work was done. I personally verified every transaction. Each payment coincides with specific periods." She paused, looking directly at Emma. "Each payment was made during key milestones in Catherine's illness. First hospitalization, $50,000. Start of chemotherapy, $75,000. Terminal diagnosis, $100,000. The silence in the room was deafening. Jennifer was openly crying now. Marcus had his jaw clenched, fists tight on the table. Patricia looked at Emma with something akin to disgust. "You bled this company dry," I said, my voice breaking for the first time, "while my wife bled in a hospital bed." Emma began to cry. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't." "You didn't what, Emma? Didn't know? Didn't think? Didn't care?" Bradley stood up. "Enough. We're not going to sit here being accused by a bitter old man who can't accept that he's incompetent to run this company. If you want to sue us, sue us. But we'll countersue for defamation, harassment, and abuse of power." "Sit down," David said calmly. "I won't." "Sit down," David repeated, this time with steel in his voice, "or you will be removed by security. You haven't seen everything yet." Bradley sat slowly, realizing he was losing control of the situation. "There's more," I continued. "Catherine discovered the embezzlement 3 months before she died. She hired a private investigator. But she also did something else." I looked at Rosa, sitting quietly in the corner of the room. "Rosa, please." Rosa stood, notebook in hand. With a firm voice, she began reading her records. Every visit. Every attempt by Emma and Bradley to get Catherine to sign documents. Every refusal. Every tear. January 20th, Rosa read. "Mrs. Peterson said, 'My daughter thinks I don't know. But I always knew. Mothers always know when they lose their daughters, even while they are still alive.'" Emma was now sobbing, her face in her hands. Bradley had stopped trying to look confident. He stared at the table, jaw tight. "Catherine was lucid until the end," I said. "Despite your attempts to convince doctors otherwise. And in her final days, she prepared something." I signaled to David. He turned on the projector. Catherine's image appeared on the screen. She was weak, but her eyes were clear and determined. The room went completely silent. "If you are watching this," Catherine's voice filled the room, "it is because my daughter and my son-in-law tried to take what is not theirs. I wanted to believe Emma was better than this. I really did." She paused, wiping away tears. "But a mother must protect what she built, even from her own daughter." Catherine continued, detailing every discovery, every piece of evidence, every moment her heart broke realizing what was happening. "So I prepared this. A will that protects not only the company but the values Thomas and I always stood for. Integrity. Honesty. Honest work. And I included a very specific clause." On the screen, Catherine held a document. "This company can only be inherited by someone who shares our blood and our values. I established a council of 3 people who must vote unanimously. Thomas, David, and Helen. If the 3 do not agree that the heir is worthy, the company will go to a charitable foundation that Thomas and I created." Bradley went pale. "You can't do that." "It's already done," David said. "The will was registered 3 weeks before Catherine's death. It is legal and binding." "But Emma is the biological daughter," Bradley argued, desperate now. "She has rights." "Rights." Helen stood, her voice sharp. "You want to talk about rights? How about Catherine's right to die in peace without worrying that her company would be destroyed? How about Thomas's right not to be manipulated by his own family? And there's one more thing," I said. I took the final envelope from the safe. "Catherine left this for me. A DNA test." Emma looked up, confused. "Dad, you already know I'm your daughter." "Yes. But the test wasn't about paternity." I opened the document. It was about maternal lineage. Catherine had a rare genetic condition. Only 1 in a million people has it. And the test shows. I paused, looking at my daughter. For a moment, I saw the 7-year-old wearing my safety helmet. The teenager laughing at graduation. The bride on her wedding day. But then I remembered her sitting next to Bradley, forcing me to sign papers days after the funeral. The test shows Emma inherited this condition. She is, without a doubt, Catherine's biological daughter. Emma looked relieved for a second. Then confused. "But," I continued, Catherine included an additional clause. "Biological descent is necessary but not sufficient. The heir must demonstrate commitment to the company's values." and the council has the final authority to determine this. I looked at David and Helen. Both nodded. Based on the evidence presented here today, I said formally, I vote no. Emma Peterson has not demonstrated the necessary values to inherit this company. I also vote no, David said. No, Helen added. Unanimous vote, I concluded. Emma, you are removed from any line of succession. Your position in the company is terminated, effective immediately. Bradley Foster, you never had a formal position here, but you are banned from all company properties. And both of you will face criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. Bradley exploded. You can't do this. We'll fight. We'll take this to every court in the country. Go ahead, David said calmly. But you stole from a private company, with complete documentation of the crime. The evidence is irrefutable. You will lose. And you will go to prison. Bradley looked around the room, searching for allies. He found none. Everyone looked at him with disgust. He grabbed Emma by the arm. Let's go. We don't need this. But Emma did not move. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Dad, please. I know I was wrong. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But she was my mother. And I lost her. And now I'm losing you too. My heart ached. Because despite everything, she was still my daughter. I took Catherine's final note from my pocket. Your mother left me this on her last day. I read aloud. She said to give you a chance to redeem yourself. Even if you don't deserve it. Because that's what love does. Emma sobbed louder. Then here is your chance, I said. One chance. You testify against Bradley. Tell everything you know. Return every cent you still have. And spend the next years proving that the person your mother raised still exists within you. And if I do this, then maybe, just maybe, one day you can have a relationship with your father again. But the company? That is lost to you. Forever. Emma looked at Bradley. He was red, furious, clutching the folder like a shield. Choose, I said simply. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Emma slowly stood. She walked to where Bradley stood and took the folder from his hands. In this folder, she said, voice trembling, are all the documents Bradley made me sign. Bank accounts. Transfers. Everything. She placed the folder on the table in front of David. He said it was legal. Said we were just protecting our future. But I knew. Deep down, I always knew it was wrong. Emma. Bradley shouted. What are you doing? What I should have done from the start, she replied, looking at me. Choosing my real family. Bradley began to advance, but Richard and Marcus stood, blocking the way. I suggest you leave, Richard said, voice low and threatening. Bradley looked around once more, realizing he was completely alone. With one last look of hatred at Emma, he stormed out, slamming the door. Emma collapsed into the chair, trembling. Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the daughter Mom deserved. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The emotions were too much. Anger, sadness, relief, all tangled in a knot in my chest. David will prepare the documents for your cooperation, I finally said. And we'll return all the money to the company's funds. You will testify against Bradley in court. And then, I paused. And then we'll see. Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you, Dad. For not giving up on me completely. She left, escorted by Helen. The room remained silent for a long moment. Well, Patricia finally said, that was the most intense meeting I've ever attended. There was nervous laughter around the table. The tension began to dissipate. Catherine knew what she was doing, Jennifer said softly. She always knew. Yes, I agreed. She always knew. We spent the next hour discussing the next steps. Criminal case against Bradley. Full financial audit. Press release. There was much work ahead. But for the first time since the funeral, I felt I was not carrying the burden alone. Catherine had given me the tools. She had given me allies. She had given me a path. When the meeting ended and everyone left, I stayed alone in the room. I looked out the window at the city Catherine loved. We did it, I whispered. We did justice. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace. 3 weeks after the board meeting, I was sitting in federal court. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the backbenches, laptops open, pens ready. The case had gained local media attention. Not every day did a story of family betrayal involve nearly $1 million. Bradley was seated at the defense table with his 2 expensive lawyers. He wore a discreet suit, trying to look respectable. But his eyes betrayed panic. He knew what was coming. Emma sat beside me in the witness benches. She had lost weight over the past few weeks. Permanent dark circles under her eyes. She had moved back into a small apartment, returned the luxury car, canceled her credit cards. She was trying, at least. The judge entered. Judge Martha Rodriguez, known for being tough but fair. She was 60 years old, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, and eyes that did not forgive lies. Case number 2024 CF 8847, she announced. The State versus Bradley James Foster. Charges of corporate fraud, embezzlement, document forgery, and conspiracy. The prosecutor, a tall man named Daniel Park, stood. Your Honor, the State is ready to present irrefutable evidence that the defendant systematically diverted funds from a private company over a 2-year period, totaling $812,450. Bradley's lawyer, a red-faced man named Gerald Morrison, also stood. Your Honor, my client vehemently denies all allegations. This is a personal vendetta of a bitter father-in-law who cannot accept that his daughter chose a successful husband. I clenched my fists. David, sitting on my other side, placed a hand on my arm. Calm. Let the evidence speak. The prosecutor called the first witness. It was James, our financial controller. Mr. Williams, the prosecutor began, can you explain to the court how these transactions were processed? James opened his folder. Every payment to EB Solutions was authorized with what appeared to be Mr. Thomas Peterson's signature. But when compared to genuine samples of his signature, the discrepancies are obvious. He displayed enlarged documents. Look here. Mr. Peterson's real signature has a specific curve on the P. The forged signatures are all straight. And you were aware of these transactions at the time? I processed what I received. I assumed they were legitimate. But looking back, I see every document was sent directly by Bradley Foster, bypassing normal approval channels. Bradley's lawyer tried to counter. But you cannot prove my client forged these signatures. Anyone with access could have done it. True, James agreed. Except every email came from Mr. Foster's personal address. And IP logs show all were sent from his home computer. Murmurs rippled through the room. The judge banged the gavel. Order. The next witness was Helen. She was impeccable as always, her voice firm and clear. Ms. Zhao, the prosecutor said, can you describe the meeting you had with the defendant on February 7th? I can. Bradley Foster invited me to lunch. He said he wanted to discuss the company's future. But what he really wanted was to bribe me. She described the meeting in detail. The offer of $200,000. The promise of an additional $500,000. All to secure her vote in favor of transferring the company. And do you have proof of this? Helen pulled out her phone. I have the full recording. With the court's permission. The judge nodded. Bradley's voice filled the courtroom. Helen, you are a smart woman. You know how things work. Thomas is finished. I saw Bradley's face turn red as his own voice betrayed him. He whispered something angrily to his lawyer. The recording continued. Every word was a stone building the wall of his conviction. When it ended, the room was completely silent. No further questions, the prosecutor said. Bradley's lawyer stood but seemed to have lost some of his confidence. Ms. Zhao, isn't it true that you had a close relationship with the late Catherine Peterson? That you might be biased against my client? Catherine Peterson was my boss and my friend, Helen replied, her voice firm. But I don't need bias when I have facts. Your client committed a crime. The recording proves it. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Emma was called to testify. She walked to the front slowly, as if each step weighed tons. She took the oath with a trembling voice. When she sat, she finally looked at Bradley. He stared at her with pure hatred. "Ms. Foster," the prosecutor began gently, "I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell the court about your involvement with EB Solutions." Emma took a deep breath. "Bradley created the company 6 months after we married. He said it was for our future. That my parents had plenty of money and wouldn't miss a few thousand." "And you agreed?" "At first, I didn't know where the money came from. Bradley handled the finances. But when my mother got sick," her voice broke. "When she got sick, the amounts increased. And I asked. Bradley said it was our right. That it would eventually be ours anyway." "Did you know the money was being stolen?" Emma closed her eyes. Tears ran down her face. "Yes. I knew. Not from the start, but I knew. And I let it happen because," she paused, struggling to speak, "because I had become someone who chooses money over family." Bradley's lawyer stood. "Objection. The witness is being dramatic to gain sympathy." "Overruled," the judge said sharply. "Continue, Ms. Foster." Emma recounted everything. Every transaction she knew of. Every conversation with Bradley. The attempts to make Catherine sign powers of attorney. The plans to declare Thomas incompetent. "And why did you decide to testify against your husband?" "Because my mother died knowing her own daughter betrayed her. And because my father gave me a chance I didn't deserve. A chance to try to be the person they raised me to be. Not for me, but for my mother's memory." When it was Bradley's lawyer's turn to cross-examine, he was brutal. "You betrayed your parents. You stole from them. And now you betray your husband to save your own skin. Why should the court believe anything you say?" Emma looked directly at him. "The court doesn't need to believe me. It needs to believe the documents. The bank statements. The recordings. I am just a coward who finally found the courage to do the right thing." There was a moment of silence. Then the judge spoke. "Next witness." I was called next. I walked to the front feeling the weight of every eye on me. The prosecutor was gentle. "Mr. Peterson, can you describe how you felt upon discovering what was happening?" I looked at the jury. 12 people. 12 strangers who would decide Bradley's fate. My wife and I built that company with our own hands. We worked 60, 70 hours a week. We missed holidays. We missed birthdays. But we did it for something bigger than ourselves. We wanted to leave a legacy. My voice grew stronger. And while my wife was dying, while I held her hand in a hospital bed, this man was stealing everything we built. Not just the money. Our dignity. Our trust. The future we wanted to leave for our daughter. I looked directly at Bradley. He didn't just take money. He took the last months of peace my wife deserved. She died knowing she had been betrayed by the people she loved most. There was no cross-examination. What could be said? The evidence had been presented. Documents. Statements. Investigator reports. Each piece building a case impossible to refute. Then came the final moment. The prosecutor made his closing statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about greed. Pure and simple greed. Bradley Foster saw an opportunity. A dying woman. A desperate husband. A vulnerable company. And he took everything he could." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But this case is also about justice. Catherine Peterson spent her last days preparing evidence because she knew justice needed to be done. She did not live to see this day. But you can honor her memory by doing the right thing." Bradley's lawyer made his defense. Tried to paint Bradley as a victim of circumstances, misunderstandings, a vengeful family. But his words sounded hollow against the weight of the evidence. The jury retired. We waited. 40 minutes became an hour. An hour became 2. Emma sat beside me, trembling. "Dad, thank you for letting me testify. You did the right thing." I did. But too late. It's never too late to do the right thing. Your mother believed that. 2 hours and 15 minutes later, the jury returned. The forewoman, a middle-aged woman, stood. "We have reached a verdict." The room fell completely silent. I could hear my own heart beating. "On the charge of corporate fraud, we find the defendant guilty." Bradley went pale. On the charge of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. His lawyers whispered furiously. On the charge of document forgery, we find the defendant guilty. His hands trembled. On the charge of conspiracy, we find the defendant guilty. Bradley collapsed into his chair as if his legs had given out. The judge banged the gavel. Mr. Foster, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will be determined in 30 days. Until then, you will remain in custody without bail. 2 officers approached. Bradley tried to speak, but no sound came out. They handcuffed him and led him away. As he passed by me, our eyes met for a brief second. No more arrogance. Just the belated understanding that he had lost everything. Emma was silently crying. Not for Bradley. For everything she had thrown away. Outside the courthouse, journalists surrounded us. Flashing cameras. Microphones pushed in my face. Mr. Peterson, how do you feel about the verdict? I paused, thinking carefully. Justice has been served. But there are no winners here. My wife is still dead. My family is still broken. The money can be returned, but trust is something we will never fully recover. And your daughter? Will she face charges? I looked at Emma, standing behind me, trying to hide from the cameras. My daughter fully cooperated with the investigation. She is returning everything she still has. And she is working to become a better person. That is all I can ask. That night, I sat alone in Catherine's office. The wedding photo still sat beside the computer. I took the envelope with her final letter and reread it. Don't let anger consume you. Do what needs to be done, but remember Emma is still our daughter. I did, Catherine, I whispered. I did justice. And I gave her a chance, as you asked. My phone rang. It was Emma. Dad? Are you okay? I am. And you? No. But I'll be. Eventually. She paused. Thank you. For not giving up on me. Your mother never gave up on you. Even at the end. She believed you were still there somewhere. She was right. I am still here. It will take time, but I will prove it. We hung up. I looked out the window at the city. So many lights. So many lives. So many stories. And our story was far from over. 30 days later, I returned to court for Bradley's sentencing. The room was less crowded this time. Only the main parties present. The judge looked at Bradley, who was much thinner, much paler. Mr. Foster, you abused trust. Exploited tragedy. Manipulated your wife. And showed zero remorse throughout this process. She paused, letting each word weigh. Therefore, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for the first 8 years. Additionally, you must make full restitution of the stolen amount, plus interest and penalties. Bradley did not react. He was beyond reactions. Additionally, the judge continued, you are permanently barred from holding any corporate leadership position. Your voting rights in any company are revoked. And you must complete 200 hours of community service upon release. She banged the gavel one last time. This case is closed. I left the courthouse for the last time. Emma was waiting for me outside. 15 years, she said softly. He took the last years from your mother. Seems fair. We walked together to my car. For a moment, it was almost like old times. Father and daughter, just walking. Dad? Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me? I stopped, looking at her. Forgiveness isn't something that happens all at once. It's something you build, one day at a time. Keep doing the right thing. Keep being honest. Keep trying. And maybe with time we'll get there. I'll try. I promise. We said goodbye there. I drove home, but not directly. I stopped at the cemetery first. Catherine's headstone was simple. Just her name, dates, and the words I chose. She built dreams and protected legacies. I sat on the grass beside it. We did it, love. Justice was served. The company is safe. And Emma is trying to find her way back. The wind blew gently, moving the leaves of the nearby trees. You always knew what to do. Always had a plan. And your plan worked perfectly. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for protecting our legacy. Thank you for believing there was still hope. I stayed there until the sun began to set, feeling Catherine's presence around me. She had gone. But in so many ways, she was still here. And she always would be. 6 months had passed since Bradley's sentencing. Spring had arrived, bringing new life to the city Catherine loved so much. The trees she had insisted on planting around the office were in bloom, white and pink petals dancing in the wind. I was in her office, which had remained untouched all these months. I couldn't change a thing. Every object held a memory. Every paper held meaning. But today was different. Today, I was finally ready to move forward. Helen knocked on the door. Thomas, the meeting starts in 10 minutes. I'm coming. It was the first board meeting where we would officially announce the new succession plan. Catherine had protected the company, but I needed to ensure it would continue to thrive after I was gone. The conference room was full. All the original members, plus 3 new ones we had recruited. And there was an extra chair. For Emma. She had spent the past 6 months working at a small architecture office downtown, earning a third of what she used to, living in a modest apartment, driving a used car, living the life she should have had before meeting Bradley. And every week, she came to my office. Not to ask for anything. Just to talk. To tell me about her projects. To ask about my day. Rebuilding, brick by brick, the bridge she had destroyed. She entered the room hesitantly, still unaccustomed to being there without the weight of her past actions. I met her gaze and nodded to the empty chair beside me. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know the past months have been turbulent. But I want to start with good news. Our full audit is complete. All the embezzled funds have been recovered and reinvested in the company. We are financially stronger than ever. There was quiet applause around the table. But today we are not here to talk about the past. We are here to talk about the future. I looked at each person. Catherine and I built this company to last generations. Not just as a business, but as a legacy of integrity and excellence. And today, I want to announce how we will ensure that happens. I distributed documents to everyone. I am establishing a foundation. The Catherine Peterson Foundation for Sustainable Architecture. 51% of the company's shares will go to this foundation when I die. Emma looked at me, surprised but not shocked. We had talked about this. The foundation will fund architecture projects in underprivileged communities. Schools, libraries, community centers. Exactly the kind of work Catherine loved. And it will ensure this company always puts values before profits. Richard nodded approvingly. Catherine would have loved this. The remaining 49%, I continued, will be equally divided among all employees who have been here for more than 5 years. There will be no single owner. It will be a truly community-owned company. Jennifer had tears in her eyes. Thomas, this is extraordinary. It's what Catherine wanted. She believed that those who build something should share its fruits. Patricia raised her hand. And what about Emma? The room went silent. Everyone looked at my daughter. Emma will not receive shares of the company, I said clearly. But she will receive something more valuable. If she proves, over the next 5 years, that she shares her mother's values, she will be appointed director of the foundation. It will be her job to ensure Catherine's legacy continues. Emma covered her mouth, fighting back tears. Dad, I don't know what to say. Say that you will make your mother proud. I will. I promise I will. Marcus spoke for the first time. Thomas, and you? When do you plan to retire? I laughed. Retire? Catherine would kill me if I stopped working. No, I will continue as long as my health allows. But I will be training the next generation of leaders. Helen has already taken on more responsibilities as co-CEO. Helen smiled. And I'm already completely overwhelmed, thank you. There were laughs around the table. It felt good to laugh again. It seemed like years since this room had last seen joy. We spent the next few hours discussing details. The foundation structure. Project selection process. Criteria for share distribution. It was technical work, but work that carried Catherine's spirit in every detail. When the meeting ended and everyone left, Emma stayed. "Dad, why are you doing this? After everything I did." "Because your mother taught me that legacy isn't about punishing mistakes. It's about giving chances to get it right." I sat beside her. "You made terrible mistakes, Emma. You hurt people who loved you. You betrayed trust that took decades to build." She nodded, unable to speak. "But you also had the courage to admit your mistakes. To testify against Bradley. To start over from scratch. That counts for something. It doesn't erase the past, but it builds a future. And if I fail again? Then you fail. And you learn. And you try again. That's what families do. Not because it's easy, but because it's love." Emma hugged me for the first time in months. I felt her weight, lighter now, as if she had let go of some invisible burden. "Thank you, Dad. For not giving up on me." Catherine didn't give up. I'm just following her example. That night, I went home and, for the first time in months, entered Catherine's room. I had avoided it. It was too painful. But today I felt ready. Her clothes were still in the closet. Her perfume still on the dresser. Her books still stacked on the nightstand, markers and pages she would never finish. I sat on the bed and picked up the last book she had been reading. It was about Japanese architecture. She had always loved the simplicity and elegance of Japanese design. Between the pages, I found a note. In her shaky handwriting from her final days. "Thomas, if you are reading this, it means you found my secret note. I was always good at hiding messages for you to find, wasn't I? I want you to know that every day with you was a gift. Even on the hard days. Even when we argued about what color to paint the kitchen. Even when you insisted you knew the way and we ended up lost. You were my partner, my love, my anchor. Don't waste the years you still have feeling sorry. Live. Laugh. Love again, if you find someone. I wouldn't be jealous. I would be happy knowing you are not alone. Take care of Emma. She will come back to you. It may take time, but she will. Because deep down, she is still the girl who played with your safety helmets. The poison leaves. The goodness remains. Believe it. Love you forever, C." I cried. For the first time since the funeral, I cried completely. Not tears of anger or frustration. Tears of love and longing and gratitude for 40 years with such an extraordinary woman. When the tears stopped, I felt something change inside me. The pain was still there. Always would be. But now there was room for other things too. Hope. Purpose. Peace. In the following months, the Catherine Peterson Foundation took shape. Emma worked tirelessly, researching needy communities, connecting with local architects, developing criteria for project selection. Our first project was a library in a poor neighborhood on the outskirts. Catherine had started the designs before she became too ill. Emma took those designs and completed them, keeping every detail Catherine had imagined. On opening day, hundreds of people came. Children running among the new shelves. Parents admiring the computers. Teachers planning reading programs. Emma and I stood in the back, watching. "Mom would have loved this," Emma said softly. "She's here. In a way, she will always be in the buildings she designed, in the lives she touched." A little girl, maybe 7, ran up to us. "Did you build this?" she asked Emma. "My mother designed it. I just finished her work. It's beautiful. When I grow up, I want to make beautiful buildings too." Emma knelt to the girl's level. "Then study hard. Work hard. And always remember that buildings aren't just walls and roofs. They are dreams made solid." The girl smiled and ran back to her mother. Emma stayed kneeling for a moment, and I saw something on her face. Redemption. Purpose. The person Catherine always knew she could be. A year passed. Then 2. The foundation grew. We built 5 libraries, 3 schools, 2 community centers. Each project carrying Catherine's name, her spirit, her values. Emma became respected in the architectural community. Not for her last name, but for her work. Articles were written about the young architect dedicated to serving forgotten communities. And slowly, our relationship healed. It didn't go back to what it was before. It never would. But it became something new. Something built on honesty and hard work instead of assumption and entitlement. On an autumn night, 3 years after Catherine's death, Emma came home for dinner. She brought her new boyfriend, a history teacher working at one of the schools we had built. He was kind, humble, clearly in love with Emma but not her money, because she had none beyond what she earned. During dinner, Emma laughed at something he said. It was a real laugh, genuine. The first truly happy laugh I had heard from her in years. After they left, I sat in Catherine's office with a cup of tea. "She's back," I said to the air, to the spirit of Catherine I still felt around me. "Our daughter is back. You were right. The poison is gone. The goodness remains." I looked at the wedding photo that had never left that spot. Young Catherine, radiant. Young me, hopeful. 2 young people with no idea of the joys and sorrows to come. "Thank you," I whispered. "For preparing me. For protecting our legacy. For believing there was still hope when everything seemed lost. You were the wisest person I ever knew." My phone rang. It was David. "Thomas, I just got the news. The last cent of Bradley's restitution has been paid. The account is officially closed." "How much time does he still have?" 12 years. But given his behavior, he might be out in 10 on parole. 10 years. Bradley would lose his 40s, the decade most people use to build careers and families. He took shortcuts and lost it all. "And Emma?" David asked. "How is she?" "Good. Really good. Catherine would be proud." Catherine knew. She always knew how it would end. Until the very end, she had faith. After he hung up, I thought about this. Catherine had lived her final months knowing she was being betrayed, but also preparing the way back for her daughter. She could have simply disinherited Emma completely. She could have closed every door. But she left one door ajar. Small, hard to reach, but open. Because she believed people could change. That love was stronger than error. That family was about giving chances, even when undeserved. That was the real lesson. The true legacy. It wasn't about money. Not about buildings. Not even about justice, though justice mattered. It was about believing people could be better. And giving them the tools to do so. 5 years after Catherine's death, on her birthday, we held a special ceremony. We were inaugurating our 10th library, the largest yet. And for the first time, it didn't just bear Catherine's name. It bore her name and Emma's. Catherine and Emma Peterson Community Library. Where dreams meet knowledge. Emma gave the opening speech. Her voice strong, clear, without shame or hesitation. My mother taught me that architecture is about building dreams. But she also taught me something more important. That when you tear something down, you have the responsibility to rebuild. I spent years tearing down. Tearing down trust. Tearing down values. Tearing down the faith my parents had in me. The crowd was silent, absorbing every word. But my mother left me the tools to rebuild. And my father had the courage to let me try. This library, and all the others, are my way of rebuilding. Not just buildings. But the person I should have been from the start. There was applause. Not polite, but genuine. Strong. People who knew the story, who had followed Emma's journey from villain to redeemer. Later, when everyone had left, Emma and I stood alone in front of the plaque with both our names. "Do you think she would have approved?" Emma asked. "My name alongside hers?" "I think she planned this from the start. Everything she did was to bring you back. To bring us back." "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Have you forgiven me? Truly?" I thought carefully. Forgiveness isn't a door that opens suddenly. It's a bridge you build, one plank at a time. And we've been building this bridge for 5 years. We haven't completely crossed to the other side yet. But we're close. Very close. Emma nodded, understanding. "Thank you. For not giving up on the bridge." "Your mother didn't give up. How could I?" I drove home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Wholeness. Not perfect happiness. Life is never perfectly happy. But a sense of being in the right place, doing the right things, honoring the right people. Catherine had been gone for 5 years, but her legacy was more alive than ever. Not just in the buildings. Not just in the foundation, but in the lives changed. In the chances given. In the belief that people could be better. That night, I dreamed of her for the first time in months. We were young again, walking through a construction site. She pointed to the future, showing everything we would build together. "You did well," she said in the dream. "You protected our legacy. You saved our daughter. You turned tragedy into purpose. I just followed your plan." "No. You took my plan and made it better. That is love, Thomas. Not just following, but building on top." I woke with tears on my face, but smiling. For the first time since her death, I cried tears of joy instead of sorrow. The sun was rising over the city. Another day. Another chance to honor Catherine. Another opportunity to build the legacy she started. I grabbed my phone and texted Emma. "Breakfast Sunday? I have ideas for the next library." Her reply came immediately. "Always, Dad. Always." And in that simple moment, I realized the ultimate truth. Legacy isn't what you leave when you die. It's what continues living in the people you touched, in the values you taught, in the love you gave. Catherine had left more than buildings and money. She had left wisdom, hope, faith in redemption. And as long as I was alive, as long as Emma was alive, as long as every library and school we built stood, Catherine would never truly die. She would live in every child reading a book in one of her libraries. In every family finding community in one of her centers. In every person who looked at a building and thought, someone cared enough to make this beautiful. That was the true power of legacy. Not just to survive, but to inspire. Not just to remain, but to transform. And Catherine Peterson had built a legacy that would transform generations. If you've made it this far, thank you for following this story of family, forgiveness, and legacy. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe for more heart-touching stories that make us reflect on what truly matters in life.